Hello, my name is Peter Dunsmore, and in this video series I'm going to show you the techniques I used to make this box. It's a lot easier to explain this, I feel, than it is to just cut the wood on the router. I've brought the router table over so you can actually see the theory of what I'm doing. Now, this router's got fine height adjustment, and it's got the fine adjustment to move the cutter back and forward from the fence. This is a cutter that I've used to cut the slots in the corner of the box. And it's important to use the same cutter when you're making the keys to fit in the slots. Now the idea is to use some timber planed to a thickness equal to or greater than the widest point of the cutter. And then you can feed the wood across the cutter to produce the dovetail shape you see here. Now the important thing is the depth of cut has got to be set here to be the depth of cut in this, on the slot on the corner of the box. But equally importantly, the cut in each side of the timber must produce a key here that is equal to the diameter of the cutter at its widest point. If you notice that, the widest point of the dovetail in the wood is exactly the same size as the widest point in the cutter. And what you're aiming for is to make a nice sliding fit for this key into the slot in the corner of the box. Now, when you're making the splines, or the keys, you can make them out of any timber you like. Now this is a piece of walnut, and it doesn't have to be planed to any critical thickness either, so long it's greater than the diameter of the dovetail cutter at its widest point. And in this case that's 6mm, so long the timber is more than 6mm. Now you can use mahogany, or you could use ebony. Now ebony is very, very expensive to buy, but a much more cost-effective way of buying it is pen blanks, and these are 12mm square, and you can make dovetail keys out of these. A safer way to do it is to use a wider piece of timber, and then you can cut the profile on one end and then turn it over and repeat the process and cut them on the other side of the timber, and then rip the board down the middle to produce the keys. Now these keys can only be cut on the one side because of the size of the timber to begin with, but for ebony it's worth it for the effect. Now if you look very carefully right in here, the cutter is set so it produces the dovetail shape on each side of the timber. Now the depth of cut is set so it's exactly the depth of cut of the spline in the corner of the box. But you'll also notice that the width of the timber right at the bottom at its widest point is exactly the same as the base of the cutter, and the idea is that this will be a nice sliding fit into the slot cut in the corner of the box by this cutter. These keys, they're just cut to length, Just no need to be angled or anything, just cut them to length. A little bit of glue on it, a little bit of glue in the slot. And push it home. That's it. Glue in the slot. And just slide it home. And that's it. Well, it's not quite it, but that's the keys in. Let them dry thoroughly, and then either with a bandsaw or just a small hand plane or whatever you want, trim this off. Personally, I find running it up on the bandsaw, the blade fairly close to the edge of the box, I can whip off 90% of it, and then just use sandpaper in a block or a small hand plane just to trim them down nice and cleanly, and then you end up with the effect you see on the finished article. I've shown you the techniques I used to make this box. Now, as you can see, there's the dovetail keys into the corner of the box. They reinforce the box nicely, but the black contrasts nicely with the maple and makes a nice decorative feature of it. And that's repeated on all four corners. The little handle is simply an offcut of black ebony, just cut to shape with a little bevel underneath for the finger and super glued into a rebate that's cut with a sharp chisel. If you look at the top, that was veneered in the burr. If you remember, that burr was laid first, cut over size, and before the adhesive had dried, we trimmed it 30mm away from the edge and removed the waste while the glue was still tacky. Then we stuck on the black stringing, and if you notice the overhang, which takes you to the end of the box, and then just a pair of nail clippers, and it snipped off the end, the overhang, and level it smooth with a little bit of paper. Then we cut a strip of maple veneer, and one panel at a time clamped this in place with a carpet tile. Then worked our way around to the next piece, and then the next piece, and finished off on the fourth side. The carpet tile, if you remember, is very, very good because it presses evenly on the veneer and allows it to follow any slight deviation in the contour, which it wouldn't be on MDF, but if you were using a natural wood. Now, as far as the finish is concerned, I've just used a shellac sealer on this just to seal the wood, and then finished it off with a wax buffed up to a nice sheen on top. So really it's a personal thing. I don't particularly like gloss. I think a nice matte finish shows the beauty off to a better effect, but there's various finishes you could choose. The hinges are the quadrant hinges, and these were put into the box shown in the last series, and we showed you a detailed set how to actually fit them in place, so it's not worth repeating here, but these are very, very good hinges that hold the box lid open. As you can see on this one, the MDF base has got some bays on the underside, and to get the neat finish on the inside, on the edges, the base is actually glued onto the MDF first and then glued into the box, so that the base is actually underneath the box sides, and that gives you the neat edge. Something that you should take a little bit of care about is to try and get the spacings on the dovetail keys reasonably equal. And as in most box making boxes, the whole box is completed first, and then you part the box and the table saw very carefully, having made the box and the lid as one piece. I hope you've enjoyed making this box with me, and I hope you've learnt something from the techniques I've used to make this. I'm Peter Dunsmore. Thank you for watching this episode. See you next time.